Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining our webinar today. I'm John D'Arienzo. I'm the CEO of doForms, and with me today I have Anthony Trani, who's going to be presenting various things that I'm going to be talking about on the screen for you to see. If for any reason you guys can't hear us or will have a question, just throw something into the chat, and Anthony will be monitoring the chat for your questions and to make sure that you guys can hear us. And hopefully you'll find today to be very interesting. We are going to kind of push the envelope today. There's a lot of people that use doForms, but like every other product in the world, you probably don't use a lot of the features and functionality that comes with the product. And in a lot of cases, it's just because you don't know what's available and you don't have the time to really dig deeper to do so. So what I want to do today is I really want to kind of expose what doForms has become, because there's a category of product out there for form-based development. And it's really people building forms as a data collection platform. And then after that, the form kind of goes away and it's just data. And that's really just form-based data collection. And doForms has become much more than that. It's really become a platform, an entire solutions platform, and the ability to actually build pretty slick mobile applications now. So I want to talk more about that today so that everybody has a sort of more of an understanding and maybe able to exploit some more of the features. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about doForms in several different ways. So I'm going to start out by talking about doForms as document management, because we've seen companies like DocuSign become worth billions of dollars, and you got products like Adobe trying to become more powerful and add signatures and things of that nature. There's a whole field out there for document management. But doForms as a platform is a very powerful document management platform. I might even argue more powerful than those other products that I just mentioned. And there's several reasons, for that. If you look at like PDFs and DocuSign, it's really just a document with an appendage on it called a signature. And in doForms, that signature is integrated right into your product. So today, I want to tell you about something that most of you probably have seen, but never really knew what it was. It's a little icon in your portal called Fill and Send. And Fill and Send allows you to basically open up one of your forms, start to fill it out, and then send it to somebody. But more importantly, it monitors the fact that it sent it to somebody. So unlike attaching a PDF in an email where the best you can do is say, did that person receive it and did they read it? The read is subject to them telling you they read it. The system can tell you they received it, but it may have gone in their junk box. So with Fill and Send, it actually tells you when they've clicked on the link in the email that we've sent them and they've opened it up. We now know that they're working in this document. So the first thing with Fill and Send is you can build a form, open it up, send it, and monitor the status or the progress of that document as people are working within it. The next thing to understand is that it's credit-based. So even though you're using Fill and Send and doForms, that person doesn't have to have a license. So you can pay a small credit to use Fill and Send, and you can send the form to anybody. They can basically sign that form, pay by credit card with that form. They can fill out orders. They can do anything they want and send that back to you. Now, there's a ton of automated workflow built into this process. So you have the ability for the person filling it out to send it to the person that is signing it. When they're done, that could automatically be forwarded to another person who's going to either authorize that particular thing. Maybe another person gets it after that who's going to fulfill the order. So it's not just a single, hey, sign this for me and send it back to me. It has the ability to become an entire automated workflow. So we just did a full-blown Fill and Send solution for a customer who basically had the need for their employees, they have like 20,000 employees, to order phone equipment. So they would call up, and the person responsible for that would use this Fill and Send. They fill out a form. They put the availability of that person's time to be upgraded. So they first verify that that person's due for an upgrade. They fill out the form and Fill and Send. They send it to that person. That person then picks the device that they want, and then they send it to their supervisor, who then authorizes that they're allowed to get this new phone. And then that goes back to the administrator, who effectively approves it, and then it goes to the wireless carrier to be fulfilled. So that entire document management process with signature and automated workflow worked very well. Now, one of the reasons it worked very well is because we have two things. One is optimal device rendering. So there's a very important feature I love to use in doForms that's called, handle this form this way if the screen is smaller than. So as an example, if you had city, state, and zip next to each other in a layout grid, and you said, show this as stacked if the form is smaller than 5 inches, it will automatically change that from something that looks nice, let's say on a tablet, to something that looks nice on a small phone. So I use that only, display this way if the screen size is smaller than, to make sure that when I'm sending out a form and I'm not sure who the person is that's going to receive it, that form has the ability to automatically render itself appropriately on that device. And you're just telling it the rules of how you want it to do. And the things that work like that are, you have radio buttons that go across. You could say ignore going across if the screen is smaller than, so it puts the radio buttons down. If you have a table, you could tell it to expand the table beyond the screen. So you could say make the table 300% of the screen. That makes it pan right and left, but it doesn't squish it. Makes it much more easy for somebody to fill out on a small device. And the next thing that's critical is we have what we call entity rules and permissions. So in this particular case, the administrator filled out the ability for them to get a phone and which phone company they could use and all the important information. And then they forwarded it to the other person, the person requesting a form. They were not allowed to touch any of the information that the administrator filled out, but they were required to pick a phone and sign. And then they were required to put in the email address of their supervisor. That automatically forwarded it to the supervisor. The supervisor wasn't allowed to change the phone selection or anything like that. They were only allowed to sign it and send it on its way. So each person in that workflow basically had rules and permissions on what they could do and what they had to do when they received the form. The next thing is signature protection. So everybody talks about, DocuSign as being a secure signature. doForms has extremely secure signatures because as long as you put allow edit, you take that off as a feature. So when you're putting a form together, if you remove the allow edit option, then that will never be editable again. You cannot even go back into doForms and click allow edit on. The system will not even let you go back and change it so that you therefore would be able to go back in and look at your forms and change the signatures. Once a signature is collected under the allow edit off option, that signature is never modifiable again by a single person. So total signature protection, plus you could GPS stamp it, you can time stamp it. There's a whole bunch of ways you could document that signature is accurate. And if you're really into things like document protection and you need things for, let's say, 21 CFR Part 11 compliance, we have a product now called SyncDB that will basically store every single modification ever made to your form. Who did it, when it was done, what the change was. It'll show you the existing value and then the new value at the time that it was done. Complete audit trail for 21 CFR Part 11 compliance. And then the interesting thing about our documentation management is you then get all the options for integration. So if you send somebody, let's say, a document through Fill and Send, and they fill it out and they sign it and they approve the order, then you can use our integration, let's say, to update Salesforce that sale was made. All completely automated, so nothing has to happen. You just go into Fill and Send, you fill out your document, send it to the customer approves it, the document comes back. As soon as it hits us, Sync and Save picks it up, updates Salesforce.com with that information. So we like to believe that doForms as a document management system has all the features that really make it a truly robust document management system and really should be considered as opposed to using things like DocuSign and trying to use Adobe PDFs, which, are really difficult to use, really difficult to create. Now they have a new version that's very expensive to use if you want to add signatures to it because they're trying to compete against DocuSign. You get all of those features that DocuSign has, Adobe has, and 10 times those features with doForms for probably half the price. So what Anthony just showed you, if you look at his screen, is when you go into Fill and Send, you're basically picking your person you want to send it to. And, you have the ability to put a subject, you have the ability to put, body in the message along with the link that's going to be sent. You have the ability to determine how that link is going to be sent. Is it going to be sent as an icon? Is it going to be sent as a link and an icon? And you also have the ability to effectively document in your form. Now you're picking who you're sending it to, and you're picking what information you want to put in. So if this was an order that you took over the phone, let's say as a call center, and you filled out the order, the customer wanted 10 of these and 10 of those, and you needed to send them the invoice for signature and payment, you'd be on the call center using fill and send to take this information, get the customer's email address, and when you're done, you send it to them. Now, Anthony, if you close this or send it, go ahead and send it. What you'll see in the portal behind this form is that fill and send actually maintains.
It logged me out, John. I got it here, though. It's still sent.
So Anthony sees the document. He got the email. He got the link. So it's telling him to open it up this link because he's got to sign this document and send it. You'll see that it's basically the same document that you received when you saw it on your fill and send screen. And when he goes back to fill and send, Anthony has about 6 accounts open for me today to do demos, so he's probably tripping over himself and closing things. So
apologize about that, guys. Here we are.
So when you go into your fill and send portal now, you'll basically see that you have tracking for that fill and send document. So you'll see that the person opened it. You'll basically see that they've completed it. You can effectively manage what the status is of your system. You'll see if it was forwarded to the next person. You'll see that that person completed it. So you have a full audit trail, basically, of everybody in the workflow for document management. So Anthony signed the document as a fill and send person, and he completed it. And when you come back, you can see the status is now completed. So we know now if that document had a forward in it, because it was being forwarded to a supervisor, you would see the forward as the status, and you know that it was forwarded to that supervisor. So let's kind of move on. Anthony, go into S-Class. And I want to talk a little bit about S-Class. You'll see Anthony's has a bunch of things open because I'm going to be calling on him all day to kind of flip and flop between things. But I want to talk a little bit about field service. And one of the things that's important to know is we have a new portal. It's available now. It's a paid-for web portal. So people that are on the older portal that was not required to be paid for in a couple of years ago, if you're still on that portal and you decide you want to use this portal, you just need to upgrade your system for web clients to be able to use this portal. But you can contact us. Any newer customers, this portal is now available. We haven't released it yet as part of the product, but it's available to you. So as being part of this webinar, you want to call us and ask to get access to the S-Class portal, feel free. It will be released soon. We're just adding a lot of features to it. One of the features that we have now is a very robust GPS capability. So Anthony, if you click on like satellite, you can show them that you have the satellite capability. It's all based on Google Maps now. So you have satellite capability built into the system. Anthony, if you click on one of the rows below, it'll zoom in on that row. So click on like a row, and you'll see that it takes you right to that location. You can basically rerun your path. So you could say, show me a video of how my driver drove today. You could say, find closest vehicle to a particular location. You can type that address in. It'll find the closest vehicle to that location. So GPS tracking is getting much more robust. You'll see that you're getting your speed. You'll see that you're getting everything that you need for a typical GPS. Now, it's not, I'm going to say, as good from the perspective of a vehicle-based GPS, because you can't do things like engine diagnostics. You can't have sensors. if the person turns off their phone, it's going to turn off GPS tracking. But it's actually a much better GPS tracker as far as accuracy, because the hardware running the GPS tracking, your phone or your tablet, is a very robust device with a lot of CPU and a lot of capability, where most under the dashboard GPS tracking devices are very cheap because they're meant to be affordable. They try to get them free or under $99. So the CPUs are not very robust. They don't have a lot of power in them. Plus, they're mounted under dashboards, which don't give you the best line of sight to the sky. So, the phone-based GPS that we're providing here is actually very accurate. You can tell when they come back on. You can tell if the battery's going low. It'll give you alerts on battery condition. So it's kind of, you may not be able to tell that they shut it off, because when they shut it off, it stops reporting, but you'll know that they turned it back on. So you can ask why, did this come back on? And if you didn't have a low battery condition, then they were basically trying to cheat. So they're good indicators in the system to keep people from just turning it on or off. We're about to add some things to this system like geofencing. So in the next release of the portal, you'll have the ability to dispatch a job and document its location coordinates. And then the device will actually alert the system when they have a geofence arrival or a geofence departure. So we're going to continue to enhance this GPS tracking product. We're also going to be adding into the data things like on duty and off duty. So when you start looking at the GPS data below for this particular person, you're going to see that they went on duty at 9 o'clock. You're going to see that they started moving at 9:05. They stopped moving. They went 50 miles. They had a geofence arrival. They have a form open event. They basically went and did some more statuses from within the form. They went on break. They went on lunch. They came off lunch. All of your information is going to be documented now in this GPS stream, and we'll be able to do things like really sophisticated electronic timesheets that will tell you everything about both their trip, the forms that they filled out. You could add things like how much revenue they generated right into these things. So it's going to become a very robust reporting infrastructure. And we'll start to add a lot of canned reports into here, like the ability to show you geofence arrivals and departures. So a lot of big plans for what's coming in GPS. But if you're looking to use doForms for field service, I think it's important to know, one, we have the regular, hey, I want to dispatch somebody, which is what most of our competition has. I want to fill out a form, or I want to put some information in and send it out. doForms goes well beyond that. So Anthony, open up like the calendar-based scheduling. So with doForms in dispatch and for field service, you can do calendar-based scheduling. And in calendar-based scheduling, you can do things like repeat jobs, or if you were a pool store and you had to have somebody every Monday somewhere for the summer, you could define a job and then tell it to set that job for every Monday at 10 o'clock for the rest of the summer. And you can schedule jobs both to a licensed user and to a non-licensed user using a credit. So you could dispatch to your mobile devices, or you could dispatch to email. Let's say you have 50 people that work for you as on a weekend where they do extra work. Maybe you get busy on a weekend, so you have a bunch of extra people, but you don't hire them as employees. Now you can keep their email addresses in the system and just dispatch to them. And as soon as they get that dispatch and open the form, all of the same infrastructure follows on after that. A new feature we've added to this is in the past, if you had the ability up on top to pick the job date and the time the job had to start, all the stuff you needed to put it on the calendar, you sort of had to retype that again inside your form if you wanted that same data in the form. But now you could actually use the calculation widget, and you can use schedule variables, and you could point the calculation widget to the date that you've set the dispatch to, you schedule the job for, and the time and the duration. So all of the information that you have in that top section of the dispatch form, you can now have automatically populate into your form without having to retype that information. So once again, we're making our dispatch really robust. We've added the ability to recall jobs in S-Class. So if you sent a job to somebody, it's already on their device, and you want to recall that job, you have the ability to recall that job and bring it back and reassign it. We're also about to add the ability to modify a job that's on somebody's device. So if you want to just change it instead of having to recall and resend it to them, in the future, you'll be able to do is modify the job. Now, remember, that's all different being able to modify a job. If you have a job scheduled, but it wasn't sent yet, you could still modify it. Once it's on somebody's device, you would have to recall that job, and in the future, you'll just be able to modify it. So a lot of infrastructure and dispatch to be able to manage your users and getting more powerful every day. One thing I want to let everybody know about, because you may not know, is we have mobile user-based scheduling now. So we've had a customer that came to us and said, you know, my guy has a lot of preventive maintenance jobs and I don't really schedule them for them, and I never really know what they're doing. I only schedule them if I have, let's say it's an HVAC emergency, somebody doesn't have air conditioning and I got to send them there, then I'll hot dispatch them. But otherwise, they're just, you know, picking the 100 preventive maintenance jobs they got to do a month. They'll decide when they're going to go, but I have no insight into that. Well, now you can build a form where it asks the person to schedule themselves for the day or the week. And then once they do that and submit that form, it completely populates the calendar on the portal, and then it resends them the individual jobs. So now you could track those jobs individually as they go to them, they open them, they're working on them, they're sending back messages. So you've got complete capability now for either a dispatcher to effectively fill out a schedule for somebody, or for the worker to be able to fill out their schedule. Very big in healthcare, where people are going to have to start to do EVV, and most of the healthcare systems today have no scheduling capability. So our healthcare customers are using this to basically allow the caregivers to set their own schedules. It comes back in, shows the back office where they're going, sends them back out the visit, and then the visit is used to basically confirm that they got to the right location at the right time, which is the proof they have to provide to the government for EVV. So mobile user-based scheduling, very important feature. The other thing that's important to know is with our form forwarding capability, it's very easy to build a dispatch for a mobile user. So if you had a supervisor in a field and they wanted to be able to open up a form and effectively send it to somebody, well, they don't have to go into the dispatch portal and do forms. They can effectively go into that form, if you build it correctly, open that form up, put all the address information in it, pick one of your users. So you could have a whole list of users in the system already pre-canned in there. They pick Joe, and that form gets forwarded to Joe. It then functions, for the most part, exactly like a dispatch. So you could do dispatching from your supervisors using their mobile devices in the field using the form forwarding capability. Another new feature that's about to come out, or we're about to release it, is attachments. So we had a customer who needed to be able to dispatch and include an attachment. So now you'll have the ability in doForms to say, hey, I want to dispatch you, but I am going to attach maybe a copy of the person's last invoice, maybe a copy of their accounts receivable sheet, maybe specific blueprints of the job site. So you can now attach attachments as part of your dispatch in the 6.0 version. Electronic timesheets, we're going to go into that in a few seconds. I'll make Anthony bring up something, but before that, obviously you can invoice. We've added a new capability. It's available today for payment using Square. You have to contact us to use it, and you have to use a different version of doForms. In order to do Square the way we wanted to do it, where it was embedded into doForms and was very easy to use and very powerful, we had to integrate the entire Square app, which made doForms very big. So we didn't want to have everybody have to have that big an app. So basically, if you want to use doForms for payment and you contact us, we will show you how to get it set up. We'll make sure that you have the right version of the application, and it works very well. It works on the browser. It works on your mobile forms. You can use it for payment anywhere you want to go. So even in fill and send, if you had Square payment, you could put the payment right into your fill and send doc, require that they sign and pay by credit card, and you can make that happen in your document management. And then obviously with the integration options, you know, we're able to effectively update your backend systems, especially things like QuickBooks. Now, Anthony, can you bring up, before we go into some other stuff, can you just bring up the Pepsi app? I want to talk about doForms and building mobile apps, right? So if you look at this on the screen, this doesn't look like a form. Forms traditionally have captions and text boxes to fill out and radio buttons and check boxes. This works completely different from a mobile form. So like Anthony, click on, put an ID in and click on enter. and you'll see that it went to off to on duty. The button changed to on duty. So it populated that person's name, it put an on duty button. And now if Anthony clicks on duty, you'll see that this form is going to go right back to becoming a time clock again. So this is actually something we just did for this customer, that they mounted a Samsung device to a wall and effectively has it as a time clock. And the reason that we're showing this little demo, this is not their version of it, is that doForms just now function totally different than a form. It didn't look like a form, it didn't function like a form, and it returned back. So this could be on the side of a landscape vehicle where all the landscapers go up to it and time in. They could be on the side of a construction vehicle. So if you wanted to have a job site time clock, you can do that now. But let's talk a little bit about, what just happened. So what we did is we used our retrieve capability to say, hey, let's put a button on, and when they type in the user ID and they hit the enter button, that enter button is going to automatically go back and it's going to retrieve a record for today. And if one doesn't exist, it's going to say, if I don't have a record, then I haven't gone on duty yet. So I'm automatically going to display the on duty button. Now, how do we do that? We do that with only display if capabilities, if then else capabilities, the retrieve and modify capabilities. So what we're doing is we're basically hiding everything until they become relevant. So effectively in this case, we're hitting the enter button. And then when the enter button is hit, we have logic that says, take it away, don't show it anymore, and show the off-duty button now, because what it did is it went back and it said, okay, I found a record. So if I found a record, then they must have already gone on duty. So instead of showing the on-duty button, I'm going to show the off-duty button. So all of the buttons have logic that tell them when to display. And we're setting all kinds of things. So in the case of the off-duty button, we're doing a retrieve, and we're on the as part of the retrieve, we're populating the start time. So if the retrieve is successful in getting a record back and populating the start time, then the off-duty button says only display the off-duty button if the start time is not empty. The on-duty button says only display the on-duty button if the start time is empty. So based on the retrieve value that comes back, it either shows the on-duty or the off-duty button. So by using only display if, by using if then else logic, by using the data retrieve and modify, all of these things are allowing you to make doForms look and function like an application. So another feature that we've just added into doForms is the ability for, let's say, an action button to set a destination field. So what does that mean? In the past, an action button had to physically force an action, like launch a website or launch a video. Now, an action button, you can have two action buttons, and one says register my car, and the other one says get a new license. And as soon as you click that button, you just take a text field and you set it to something like get a license, get a registration. And then you can have all your questions in your form only display based on what the setting is of that other text box. So now the button is setting the text box as a destination field to get a registration. And then all the questions unique to getting a registration only appear when that text box equals get a registration. So when you're giving these things to the user, it's not like they just opened up and they're immediately in a form. You're kind of guiding them through. So as an example, when we did the COVID testing site facility registration, we didn't give them the entire form up front. First, we asked them to pick from a list of locations. As soon as location was not empty, another 4 boxes popped up and asked them for personal information, their gender, their age, their name, their email address. Once those 4 fields were all filled and none of them were empty, another thing popped up and asked them what date do they want to be tested. And then based on the date not being empty, it basically did a retrieve across the air, looked at the slate or that date, figured out how many people registered for each 1-hour time slot, and then it used the only display these questions if to compare how many people registered for each time slot, the max number of visits per time slot. So what it did is it said, hey, if 10 people registered for 8 to 9 and the max number of visits for 8 to 9 for that location is 10, then don't display the 8 to 9 time slot. So once again, it didn't just pop up and give somebody a ton of things to do. It completely guided them through the process on how they should fill that out, and it only asked them for additional information as they were going. We also did a bunch of stuff like if they clicked on 2 time slots, it removed the submit registration button and popped up a message that said you can only select 1 time slot. And until they unclicked one, it wouldn't show the submit button again. So we do a lot of things now where we hide the submit button until the information is there, and we can have messages up that are messages only visible when somebody's field is empty. So instead of just having the only option to say something is required, you could literally have a big message up right by the button now or at the bottom and say, you know, you won't see the button unless there's data in this particular field. So it becomes very interactive. It becomes very easy to help people make sure that they fill out all the information. So we've been starting to build very interactive forms. When you look at the COVID testing, once they filled out their form to register, they got back a PDF that had an email with a big, huge QR code. So one of the new features in 6.0 is the ability to put a QR code or a barcode into your form. But once you put it into your form, you could also put it into your PDF. So they received an email saying, hey, you registered for this location at this time between these hours. Please bring your device and show this QR code, just like you would do at the airport when you do you go on board the plane. So everything there is giving you the ability to be very powerful. For those of you that may not know, you want to really take advantage of user variables. User variables are something that allow you to set up specific questions to that user. And you can make it that user either fills them out when they start up doForms, or you could fill them out when you're configuring them in the system. Those same questions will show up in the mobile user management screen. So as an example, if you wanted a user to fill out what is your department number, what is your region, and who is your supervisor, you could set it up so that when they first start doForms, it asks them those 3 questions. It stores that information both on the portal and on their mobile device. And then you use calculation fields to point to those user variables so that they don't ever have to fill that information out again. So if you had a form where you were asking people those 3 unique questions that was information unique to them, and every time they opened that form, they had to put in their department number, their region, their supervisor name. Now they could do that once, and you could set the form up so it automatically reads that information and populates that information. We're going to talk about something. Anthony, bring up the picture of the mobile menus, the mobile menu that I sent you. So most of you guys may not know it, but there's an entire menu builder built into doForms. You can put custom icons. There's a custom icon builder. So when you're picking the icon for your form, when you're published, icon build any picture you want from any source and turn it into an icon. So you can have beautiful custom icons. There's options for putting frames around your icons. There's options for a banner at the bottom that can launch a form or a URL. So if you wanted to say, hey, click here to see our new company website, you could put the company URL in there and have a banner at the bottom. And then what you're seeing at the top of the screen is we eliminated the ribbon bar. The menu items are actually up in the upper right-hand corner in a little drop-down we call the hamburger icon. And we have a custom banner graphic. And there's 2 options there. You put the banner graphic in, and you can put a bigger banner graphic in if the device grows. So as an example, some people on a tablet will put a banner graphic in that looks perfect in portrait, and then when they go landscape with that device, it makes it look stretched out. So in doForms, you could actually put 2 banners, and when they go landscape, it'll show the larger banner, and it'll look perfect in both situations. So, you know, you don't have to have the ribbon bar. You can have everything in the hamburger icon. But in doForms now, in the menu builder, all of the features that were in the ribbon bar can now also be put into the icon field. So if you wanted to have, let's say you change the name from jobs to visits, let's say you're a healthcare provider, you can have the visits icon right in the menu body. it'll tell you how many visits they have dispatched to them right in the little icon. And if they click on it, it opens up the list of all their jobs or visits. So that feature that used to be only available in the ribbon bar or in the hamburger icon, now you can embed things like update. You can embed things like show me all my forms that I've incompleted because I need to go to them later. You could put them in there. Many of you may not even know, but when you incomplete a form, if you use the incomplete form option in the action button, you could designate categories for the incomplete forms, like require signature. So you could set up a required signature group, and then you could put that into your body. So anytime somebody incompletes a form because it requires signature, and then they want to quickly get back to all of those forms, that list of forms that need a signature, you could actually do that by embedding that right into your menu, in the body of your menu. I want to talk about the ability today to do barcode integration. So we've talked about it, many of you have heard it, but we now have the ability to support almost any device that supports barcode scanning. They typically have a side button, and when you click that side button in doForms, that will read that barcode information right into your field. You'll have the ability to parse that barcode. You'll have the ability to match it against the template to make sure that they scan the correct barcode. If you're in a table, you'll have the ability to detect if there's duplicates, meaning they scanned something twice because they were just going down a list. You'll have the ability to match a scan to a file. So if you say, hey, I want to be able to scan and then add additional data into the table, like the product name and the product description, you'll be able to do that. If you put yourself into a table and you scan, you can tell the system to automatically jump to the next row for you. We've added dynamically adding rows to tables now. So if you scan and you want to be able to expand your table automatically, now this is not just a scan feature, any table control now, if you put the feature on it says dynamically add rows, as soon as they get to the bottom row of a table, it adds another row. So this is a feature that we actually did in support of scanning because we don't really know if you're going to scan in 50 products or 200 products. So now if you do a scan and jump and the scan jumps to the last row, it automatically adds another one for you. Boom, 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 boom. We also added the ability to do barcode label printing. So we had a customer who said, hey, I need to go into the field, scan a label on a product, check a file. If the price changed, I need to produce a new label automatically and put that label on the product. Well, all of that can be done now in minutes, literally in doForms with the support we have for barcode label printers. You define your label completely in your form. You basically just say, hey, in my column 1, row 1, I want a barcode. Where do I get it? Point to this field in my form. Column 2, row 1, I want the price. Where do I get it? Point to this field in my form. And you could build a multi-row, multi-column barcode right in your form. And then you just have a barcode button. They hit it, it fills the data out of your form, and it produces the barcode label for you. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about that's the most interesting and I've been the most excited about is this whole modify capability that we're about to introduce. And what's really cool about the modify capability, you just saw Anthony do the demo of the time clock. Well, think about modify as the ability to build custom databases. So what modify does is it says, hey, you know what? I have a form, and that form is able to do a transaction like go on duty and post the time you went on duty. It also has the ability to say, I'm going off duty and post the time I'm going off duty. Now, the problem is those two pieces of data are in two separate forms, and there's no way to consolidate that into one piece of information. Now, that's critical because if you go to doForms build reports and you want to build a timesheet report, the best that you're going to be able to do is say, hey, for Joe, he has one transaction that was on duty at 10 o'clock. He has another one that was off duty at 5 o'clock. There's no way to calculate how many hours Joe worked for the day. So the best you can do in a report is just show that Joe had these two events during the week. Well, now with the modify, you could say, hey, I want a new table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a table that has Joe's ID, the date, his start time, his end time, and his hours worked, right? And what I'm going to do is when that form that Anthony showed you, that time clock form, when they pick on duty and they hit the button, what it's going to do is it's going to say, look up in that database and see if there's a record that exists for employee ID 123 and date equals June 15th, 2020. And if a record doesn't exist, you have the ability to say, if it doesn't exist, add it for me, which is very powerful because now your time entry form has the ability to add a new form into that particular table. So it adds the form, it adds employee ID, it adds date, and it adds the start time into that record. Now, Anthony comes back in at night and he goes to go off duty. So he looks for that record. He now finds it, right? Because he finds it, he's able to retrieve the start time. Because the start time is now filled, it knows to show the off-duty button. Well, if you add a modify to the off-duty button, the off-duty button modify says, hey, I don't need to create the record because I know it already exists. So all I want you to do is go back to that same record using employee ID and date, and I want you to modify the end time, and I want you to modify the hours worked. So now I had one form that had two separate transactions, one at 9 o'clock in the morning and one at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But they created a single form that had the person's ID, the person's date, the date, it had their start time, their end time, and their hours worked. So now if I go back and I say, let's build a weekly timesheet sorted by employee, I can basically say, okay, Joe, and I've got my Monday, I've got my Tuesday, I've got my Wednesday, my Thursday, they're all individual records. I've got my hours worked column, so I know how many hours they worked each day. And I've got my ability and build reports to do a sum of that total of the hours worked. So now I have the ability, based on this modify, to build a beautiful timesheet. I can now build a time clock. Like I said, you could put it on the side of a truck. You could put it in a building. You could give this same form individually to all of your employees. So in the morning, they come in, they go on duty, it posts their on-duty time. At night, they go onto the same form. It automatically tells them to go off duty. So you could add this form to all of your mobile devices. So now everybody in the field has it. We also have the ability to modify from a table. So let's say you wanted to do a supervisor timesheet. You could fill out a table where the first row is Joe, the first column is person. You pick that person. Then it puts their start time in. And effectively, you did 10 people and you submit your form. Modify table will open up each row of the table and treat it as an individual modify. So it'll basically create a time record for Joe, for Vinny, for Mike, for Mary, and just from that table. So if you want to build a supervisor version of that form, and then the supervisor at night says, hey, I'm going to log out everybody. Well, basically, he goes ahead, he fills out that table, he gets everybody, it does all of those records, it goes back and updates and modifies all those records individually based on every row in that table. Now, let me tell you why this whole modify becomes super powerful. In the past, we've had a lot of problems with work crews because you may send out 5 people in the morning, and Joe, as the supervisor, basically will say, hey, I'm going to have a form, I'm going to keep it open, and I'm going to log in 5 guys, right? And then at night, I'm going to reopen that form, and I'm going to log off 5 guys, and then I'll submit that form, right? And what happens is 2 of those guys get pulled off the job, and they get sent to another job. So now how do they go off duty? Because Joe can't put them off duty anymore. They're going to have to go off duty with the new supervisor. Well, with this new modify capability, it doesn't matter which supervisor is logging them on, and it doesn't matter which supervisor is logging them off. So now you can build very sophisticated supervisor-based timesheet management system with a single consolidated record at the end, no matter where Joe ended up throughout the day. And you could add multiple different statuses to that timesheet record. So you could have lunch, you could have break, you could have job starts, anything you want, you could build into this modify. Now we're using modify to basically do all kinds of great things. So we're using modify now for inventory. In the past, doForms, or most of our competition, all of our competition, if you use a form to collect data and that form says I sold 10 apples, right? That's it. That dies. If somebody doesn't take that data out of that system and put it into another system that was maintaining how many apples were on hand in the warehouse, right? Then there's nothing you can do with that data beyond the fact that you know that you sold 10. Well, now in doForms, you can build a table. You could say products. You could have the product ID, the product name. You could have quantity on hand. You could have last transaction date and last transaction by, right? And then as soon as somebody sells 10 apples, whether it's in a table as part of an invoice or a single record, that system can go, that form will modify that product table, and it'll say, hey, reduce the number of apples in the quantity on hand column by 10. Change the last transaction date and time to this date and time, and then use the user variable, what's my name, who's the user that did it, to update the last user. So now I've got two forms. One form has all of the transaction history. That's the form that actually was used to do the modify. And I have another form that's running in the background, maintaining my current quantity on hand. So as 15 different sales guys are reducing product by selling it, that product is constantly being minimized. Now with the retrieve capability, you could have a salesperson go back and say, show me the current quantity on hand for apples. I have an order for 100. I want to see if I'm going to be able to fulfill that order. So because that quantity on hand is being modified by all the salespeople in the field updating it, when Joe retrieves that quantity on hand to check to make sure there's product, they'll basically know that there's product on hand. So it gives you a very good capability to do inventory. We're also using it for asset tracking. So if you put, let's say, a barcode on a piece of equipment, and you build a form that every time that piece of equipment changes hands, you basically document it. Well, you could basically have those forms being the transaction history. So I know Joe had it, I know Vinny had it, I know Mike had it. But the transaction form is basically saying, hey, the last person that touched this was Mary at 10 o'clock. Because what you're doing is you're modifying back, who's the last person that had this, where is it, what's its GPS stamp, and all of that information. So you could do full-blown asset tracking now with retrieve and modify capability. One of the other interesting things with that is a lot of customers are starting to create live dashboards. So when you create a live dashboard, let's say you have trucks and you have a field and you have a place that they go. So we're doing this right now for the logging community. The truck goes and gets loaded with logs, and then it goes to, let's say, the mill and gets offloaded with logs. Well, when the form fills out the truck at the loading site where it's getting loaded at the forest, they're changing the status of that truck to loaded with a modify. So we have a table that's truck ID and truck status and last time updated and who updated it. So when they finish filling the truck, they send their form in that has how many logs they put on it and all that information. But then the modify changes the truck to loaded. And it could even change the destination to this mill. So now if you're looking at the dashboard, if you're looking at the portal, and you look at that form that basically has the truck information in it, that truck's information is changing dynamically by other people doing stuff. So if you're looking at that form and basically the truck was just loaded, it's going to change to loaded, and it's going to change its destination to mill. When it gets to the mill, it's going to say unloaded, and it's going to maybe change its destination back to the depot. So basically, you have the constant dashboard to know the status of all your vehicles. And you can do that with anything. Anthony, go into S-Class. I want to show you something new in S-Class. So go into lookups. This is where you could keep your dashboards and all of your data now that's embedded in your forms. So as an example, go to like the pesticide list, Anthony, or is that what you're in?
Yep.
Yeah. So let's say you have forms now and you want to make it very easy for your people to manage the data that goes into these forms, or you want to be able to manage the data that's coming in through modifies. If you put your form into a project called lookups, that form will automatically be displayed in S-Class. And it gives you a better viewer. So you don't have to pick a date range. You don't have to pick a project. You don't have to pick anything. You could just give your forms intelligent names. So right here now, I've got my pesticide list. I've got my list of different pests. I could go in and add, edit, or modify or delete any of these things. It'll automatically update my mobile devices with the new current list. If I had a thing in here like type and pesticide, and I had another column called number of uses, I could do a modify and say every time I use this pesticide in the field, modify the number of uses by 1. So now not only would I have this as a drop-down data list for my forms, but I could also have columns in here that are telling me how many times we've used this pesticide. I could have a column that tells me the last time we've used this pesticide. I could have a column in here that tells me the last customer we used this pesticide for. So I could have a running dashboard in here using the modify to update columns right in this lookup section. So I want to talk about also a little bit about security. So one of the things you guys may not know is if you turn on advanced security in doForms, it will require your users to do multi-factor authentication, which means they will get a code emailed to them that they have to put in order to get access to the portal. It will also turn on multi-factor authentication on the client, which means only that mobile device in which that form is generated will be able to see that device as long as they can securely log in. So nobody can steal that data and view it on anything but that particular device when it's in the field. You also have the ability to add extra encryption. So if you turn on advanced security, you can encrypt most of the fields in doForms. So if you have like patient identifying information, you could put additional encryption on those fields. What does that mean? What that means is if you don't have multi-factor authenticated login through doForms, you will not be able to see those encrypted fields. So if you email somebody a form and you have encrypted fields in it, they can't see it. Those fields will be gobbledygook. Now, with that said, let's say you want to maintain security, but you need to be able to share data with people. Well, we have now secure email, secure forwarding, and secure reporting. So let's say you wanted to have a doctor sign a prescription. You can forward them a form as secure forward because it has the patient information and maybe the diagnosis of the patient. Those fields are encrypted. You send it as a secure forward. The doctor opens it up, gets a link, clicks on the link, takes them to a secure site where they have to have their name and they have to have the code that was emailed to them to get access to one-time access to the document where they could then sign it and hit a button and it could go right back, let's say, to the caregiver. But because they went in through secure forward, those encrypted fields were no longer encrypted for them. They were allowed to see them. Same thing, if you run a report using Build Reports and you don't use secure reporting, the report will come to them with all the usernames and patient identifying information blocked out. But if you send that report securely and they follow the instructions and they are who they are and they have access to their email so they get the code, they'll get one-time access to be able to securely view that report. So you can use that for healthcare, but you can also use that in any situation where you want to make your customer feel that their data is being handled very securely and not just emailed to them where anybody has access to it. So with that said, I'm going to just tell you a couple of things, that's what's next, and then open up for questions. We're going to be adding geofencing to the system. So very cool. Your devices will be able to tell you when they arrive at locations. That information will be available inside your form as well. We're going to start doing a lot more CAN reports because as we start to do things like on duty and off duty, timesheets and geofencing, the system will have the ability to run these reports whether you build a form or not. So a lot of these things will start to come with the system just by turning on your doForms device. We're going to be adding a lot of text messaging options, so you'll be able to send text messages and things right from your forms. Many more integration options. We want to start putting in things like notifications. So now with Modify, let's say you basically drop the inventory below 10 and there's a reorder value at 10, that Modify will be able to send a notification based on the value of something at Modified dropping below a certain value. So very powerful. The forms are going to start to be able to do a lot for you, and you should be able to start using doForms out of the box. Even if you didn't build a form yet, you'll be able to GPS track, you'll be able to geofence, you'll be able to, send text messages, do timesheets, maybe just a ton of functionality for the system to start doing stuff for you. So with that, Anthony, if there's any questions, why don't you let me know and I'll be happy to answer them.
Yep, nothing so far, but if anybody has a question in your GoToWebinar screen, there should be an area for you to type in a question. So feel free to go ahead and shoot them in now. Okay, we have one question from Andy, and Andy asks, with the Modify, if we do an inspection of a device and submit the form, then the next day we realize we missed something during the inspection, can we modify the inspection data without submitting a new form that has a different auto ID number, excuse me?
Yes, because you could basically, if you would have to have the information that makes you be able to get to that form. So let's say you did an inspection and you gave it an auto number and you realize the next day that you want to modify that, that person would need to know either that auto number or some combination of unique thing, like their truck number and the date. If you have something that can identify that record uniquely, so when you do the modify, you could say, hey, the goal in modify is to be able to identify a record uniquely. So if in your form, the truck number and the date makes that unique, those two values, there'll never be another form that has that truck number and that date with an inspection, then you could basically go in and you could do a modify to say, hey, I want to modify this field in this form using these two criteria. So, basically you could go back and modify that value. Now, you wouldn't necessarily be able to bring the form back unless you were using, let's say, the retrieve function where you retrieve the whole form back. But if you wanted the person to be able to change, let's say, 5 things, the odometer reading or the, I don't know, some other field, you'd be able to build a new form, put those fields in it, and then say, put in your truck number, put in the date you want to make the modification to your inspection. What do you want to change? I want to change my odometer reading. Okay, what do you want to change it from and to? And you could even retrieve back the odometer reading they put back in on the original day. And then when they say, I want to make it, 5,000 miles more, then when you hit the submit button, you do a modify and you say, hey, for this table, for this form, with this, use 2 pieces of information, truck ID and date. I want you to replace the odometer reading with this new odometer reading.
Yep. And one other thing you can do, Andy, is if you are a web user, all of your information that gets submitted goes into your portal. So you could, if you didn't have a mobile device, let's say, you could always log into the portal and update your values in the portal as well. So you could find that record from yesterday, go in there, edit it in the portal, and make changes in the portal without needing to submit a new record.
Right. And then there's also the retrieve function that lets you retrieve the form back, make a change, and post it back again. So I don't know if you're familiar with that feature. And if you're not, you can feel free to call Anthony and he'll work you through it.
Mm-hmm. We got one more question, John. In the logging example you gave, the dashboard is dependent upon people clicking on the device to show the truck is loaded and leaving. Could the geofence addition do the same function?
The geofence function is going to send information back to the GPS data stream. So what's going to happen is you're going to basically do a dispatch. You have to do a dispatch to get geofencing because you got to tell the device. This is not going to be just like traditional GPS tracking systems. They have like a system where you could have 8 million geofences on the server, and then they're sending back tons and tons of GPS, and they're checking it on the server. This is not that. You're going to basically have the ability to dispatch to your devices. We're going to tell you when your device arrived or departed that particular dispatch location. We're also going to give you some fixed locations you could add to the mobile, like warehouses and corporate headquarters. And we're also going to give you personal locations like the person's home. So what's going to happen is maybe you're going to have 20 or 30 geofences on the device at any given time. And that device is going to be monitoring every couple of seconds, whatever, to determine if you've arrived into that geofence. Now, the reason that that's important is when you have the 8 million geofences back at the server, it's very hard to figure out geofence overlap. So if you arrive into a mini mart and there's 15 stores in there and you're only going there for one, well, I won't know which one you're going in there for because you may have 15 of them in there. So when I know that you were dispatched to go to this store in that location, I'll know that you arrived at that location. That data, once you geofence arrive, is going to be available in your form, so you'll be able to set that calculation value to equal your geofence arrival time. And then the geofence information, the arrival, will be sent back to the GPS tracking screen. So you'll see things like start moving, you'll see things like moving, stop moving, and as soon as it detects the geofence, it'll send that back as well. So you'll see a geofence arrival with the geofence name in your data, in your GPS tracking data. But once again, that's stuff that we're working on as we speak here. So you'll have a manager to be able to keep store locations so you don't have to geofence them, get coordinates every time you want to do something. So if you have the ability to, let's say, 1,000 customers that you go to, we'll have the ability for you to basically maintain those locations. And anytime you do a dispatch, just pick one of those locations and automatically give you the ability to set that data right here in your form. And your codes will automatically be canned. If it's a new customer you've never gone to, it'll ask you to find that customer on the map. It'll take those geocodes and then it'll dispatch it out. Any other questions, Anthony?
Nothing, no questions. I think that's everything, John.
So before we drop off, I'll let everybody go. It's 8 o'clock. 6.0 is released to any customer that wants it today as beta, final beta. We are getting ready to send production hopefully in the next week. And there is a list of people that get notified of the final beta so that they can test out their forms. If you have any interest or desire to be on that list, just contact Anthony. And anytime we're going to release a new product, we basically send it out to those people on that list first for feedback to make sure that they're not going to have any problems in production with their existing forms. So with that, thank you, everybody, and see you at the next webinar.
Yep, and I threw my email address into the chat window for anybody who has any additional questions or wants early access to the 6.0 release. Just go ahead and shoot me an email. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time today.